We're very excited to welcome all of you today to this informational webinar on the launching of the Impact Network, which is a network expansion as part of the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge. We hope that you'll find this webinar to be very helpful and educational, and that you will please ask us any questions that you have as your community considers whether or not you would like to apply for this opportunity to become a part of the expanded MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge Network. Momentarily here, we're going to hear from Patrick Griffin with the MacArthur Foundation to provide some welcoming remarks. We'll then talk to you a little bit about the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge and the background, the history of the challenge. We then want to spend some time discussing what the Impact Network is and what the model will look like for this network expansion. And then discuss a little bit about site application if you are in a community that's interested in applying, what the selection process will look like, and some of the next steps after today's webinar. And then finally followed up with some Q&A that you might have for all of us on the screen today. With that, without any further ado, Patrick, I'd like to turn it over to you to make some remarks on behalf of the MacArthur Foundation.
Thanks, Travis. Well, I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for your interest in the Impact Network. We're excited at the Foundation about this next step in the Safety and Justice Challenge. I think you're going to get, those of you who aren't familiar with the Safety and Justice Challenge are going to get a little bit of a rundown on it from Travis or somebody at PRI, but I can just tell you a little bit about the beginnings of it. We launched the Safety and Justice Challenge in 2015 at a time when a lot of people were concerned about mass incarceration, but there was very little discussion of the sense in which mass incarceration started locally, started in local jails, was to some degree driven by the overuse and misuse of local jails. And so we wanted to make a contribution to something that we thought was neglected at the time. We were aware that a lot of jail usage was related to behavioral health issues. And so very early on, we brought on Policy Research Inc. to be sort of our main technical assistance provider in that area. As we assembled a network of jurisdictions that were interested in tackling the problem of jail overuse and misuse, a lot of them called on PRI for help because they saw that at least one component of their jail overuse and misuse had to do with people who really belonged in other systems. So anyway, we are about 5 years into the initiative now. We've seen some results. We've like a careful study of the initiative from the Institute for State and Local Governments at CUNY found that we had, that the jurisdictions that are a part of our network succeeded in reducing their average daily population in jail pretty significantly through a variety of measures. A lot of that decline in jail usage was driven by bookings, a decline in bookings. Those are two sort of very broad takeaways. Another very broad takeaway is that although outcomes for people of color were improved in many cases in jurisdictions participating in our initiative, overall disparities, which is one of the things we were concerned about and that we were trying to do something about, have pretty much persisted. So we are a little bit partly sort of building on our successes, but also doing a little bit of a reset here because we intend to do something about racial disparities nationwide. And so in our second phase of the initiative, which is more or less beginning around now, we are concentrating on emphasizing that racial equity component, trying new things, trying to generate solutions there, and also trying to have an impact beyond the network that we've assembled. And that's really kind of what we're up to here with this Impact Network. We want to reach jurisdictions that we haven't yet worked with, and share learning with them, and share the achievements of some of our safety and justice challenge jurisdictions. And so over the next few years, we're going to be trying various things that will essentially expand the network so that it gets bigger, and that its reach gets bigger, and that its influence gets bigger, and that the impact network is sort of our first big foray into expansion. So I'll leave it there, and I can answer any questions that anybody has about anything that I've raised.
Great. Patrick, thank you so much for providing those opening remarks for all of us. And as Patrick said, at Policy Research, we've been honored for the last 5 years to be a part of the Safety and Justice Challenge. As Patrick alluded to, our role and our responsibility within the challenge is to be the primary behavioral health technical assistance provider. So we've had the opportunity over these last 5 years to travel to just about every single one of the implementation sites, and also several of the Innovation Fund sites, to help implement strategies that are focused on persons with behavioral health issues in the justice system, and also to think of and create new strategies which will have meaningful impact on local jail populations. This next phase of the Safety and Justice Challenge, the launching of the Impact Network, is exactly what Patrick talked about. It's a chance to take those things that we have learned collectively regarding folks with behavioral health disorders in the justice system, and really reach a broader audience. And that's what we want this Impact Network to be: an opportunity to teach and to learn from one another, to share successes and to share challenges, and work on those collectively for the broader impact of the entire field across the country. With that, I'm really excited to introduce, or have them introduce, our 3 staff from Policy Research that are doing the lion's share of the work on the Safety and Justice Challenge and the behavioral health issues that we're working with communities on. And I'm going to first turn it over to Ashley Kreider. Ashley.
Thanks, Travis. Hello, folks. My name is Ashley Kreider. I'm a senior project associate with PRI, and have been working with the other folks you see on the screen here on the Safety and Justice Challenge technical assistance for a few years, several years, and we're happy to be involved in this next phase and tell you a little bit more about what to expect. So I'll hand it over to Reggie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm coming to you from Denver, Colorado, where I was formerly the executive director of the Office of Behavioral Health Strategies and the Crime Prevention Control Commission, which is a criminal justice planning group. And I say that because I know that some of the folks that are tuning in today are also criminal justice planners. And you would find this network to be very beneficial in really focusing on your behavioral health populations. Very happy to be with you and look forward to working with some of the folks in the future. Lisa.
Thanks, Reggie. My name is Lisa May, and I am a senior project associate with PRI and have been for the past 2 years. I'm really excited that we're able to be a part of this network expansion and being able to share with those non-SJC sites that are will be selected what's been going on as it relates to best practices. And just it's a great opportunity for the SJC sites and the non-SJC sites. So stay tuned, and I'm going to give it back over to Ashley.
Thanks, Lisa. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'd like to share a little bit more background before we kind of talk about where we're going. So as Travis and Patrick have said, the Safety and Justice Challenge started back in 2015 and has really evolved into a really large scale initiative involving a lot of these sites that you can see indicated on that map. So all around reducing unnecessary incarceration in local jails. And the network has grown to include over 50 jurisdictions across 32 sites, cities and counties across the country. And Travis alluded to the 2 kind of levels of funding, both implementation and innovation sites. And you can find more information on the current SJC sites at the link that's right under the map. And I think somebody can paste it in the chat box too, that would be great. So you'll see profiles on all of the sites and a summary of the work that they've done to date. The network has grown to over a $200 million investment from the MacArthur Foundation. And Patrick mentioned one of the main outcomes we've seen so far at kind of the midpoint of the SJC is this really decline in average daily population for folks in jails. And we know that that's happened across the country due to COVID, but these numbers were really seen even before that point. So you can see some more specific information about the SJC's impact to date at that link on the report there. Next slide, please. As far as PRI's role, and I want to clear up any potential confusion, Policy Research Inc. is the nonprofit arm of PRA, Policy Research Associates, and we're based outside of Albany, New York, upstate New York. We have been engaged, as Travis said, to provide behavioral health focused technical assistance really across any of the sites. So as part of their initial work, the sites drafted implementation plans. Some sites included formal strategies around behavioral health, although not all. We know that the estimated population for folks in jail with mental health needs is several times that of the general population. So whether or not sites included behavioral health strategies in their initial implementation plans, I think it pretty quickly became evident that this was an area that sites needed to focus on. So again, we've been working with both levels of sites across the criminal justice system, or intercepts as we refer to them often. And you can see a sample of kind of the specific strategies that sites have focused on around behavioral health needs in particular. Often that's early diversion, intercept 0 and 1, when we talk about law enforcement involvement, crisis stabilization units, things like that. Intercept 2, looking at pretrial arraignment and what kind of alternatives to incarceration are available there. And then we get really formally into the justice system. So obviously the main focus of the SJC is reduction of local jail populations, and certainly courts and specialty courts or treatment courts come into play here. And then other sites have focused on reentry, really trying to reduce that kind of cycle of reincarceration in the back end. And then also things like probation violations and focusing on the back end again. So again, we've worked with sites across the criminal justice system. We anticipate that continuing through the Impact Network work. And as long as there's a lens of behavioral health needs and that population, that's where we come to play. Next slide, please. So the Impact Network is our next phase of technical assistance to the SJC. And as has been said already, this is a criminal justice and behavioral health focused expansion of the network. So we are excited to start to bring some of those learnings and best and promising practices from the SJC network and really expand them out to other sites across the country. You can see here what our Impact Network stands for. Maybe we will all have that down by the end of the first year, we'll see. But as you can see by the lens here, it's the mental health and substance abuse TA and training really across the system and maximizing those impacts. Next slide, please. I am going to talk a little bit more detail about the model before we turn it over to Lisa. And again, a lot of this has been alluded to already. We are focusing on best and promising practices in behavioral health reform and diversion that are known across the field, but particularly those that have been focused on through the Safety and Justice Challenge with a kind of a tri-lens here, if you will. So maintaining that focus on local jails, but also focusing on community engagement, really integrating those partners. There are some specifics in our solicitation for applications around including folks with lived experience and other aspects of community engagement on the teams. And then also, given the last year and a half, both COVID-19 and this virtual environment that we all find ourselves in, and also the focus on greater focus on racial inequities and disparities. So those will continue to be focuses of the Impact Network as well as the larger Safety and Justice Challenge. So we will be both inviting 5 current SJC sites out of that group of about 50, and that process has been in motion and is kind of running parallel to this. And then we also have released a solicitation for applications for up to 8 new or non-SJC jurisdictions. So those jurisdictions not currently receiving SJC funding. And Lisa will talk a little bit more about kind of criteria and who would be eligible. This first phase of the Impact Network is roughly a year, approximately May to May of 2022. And within that year, we envision 3 cross-site virtual convenings that will be fleshed out a little bit more, obviously due to COVID and kind of when we have a clear idea of what to expect. But definitely these 3 virtual convenings with some webinars and cross-site calls and things like that facilitated in between. So as far as a broad structure, that's a little bit what to expect. I'll turn it over to Lisa now, and we can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Ashley. So what's in it for you, right? That's what a lot of folks are asking, especially if you are an SJC site that historically has been receiving annual funding. And even though there is no additional funding and this opportunity is provided free of charge, we want to make sure that for our SJC sites, that you're understand that you're going to be reinforcing the best practices that you've been able to develop and spread them now to new non-SJC jurisdictions. And we believe that there's going to be a lot of collaboration and a lot of learning taking place. You've done things well, and we'd like to highlight that for the SJC sites. And we'd like for that highlighting to be spread across throughout the nation to those non-SJC sites and let them learn from you. We are capitalizing on these successful reforms that you've been able to accomplish to date, and would like to show that sites that are non-SJC will be supported to achieve the goals of the initiative that Patrick had discussed earlier. So in addition to specific technical assistance that PRI will be providing, you'll also be able to hear from some national SJC experts, SJC partners and national experts, centering around and guiding around data tracking and outcome measurement and whatever the need may be. We have a wealth and dearth of SMEs that we can bring in and be able to kind of share with you what the best practices, best and promising practices are, and be able to give you the technical assistance intensive TA that you may need, whether you're SJC or non-SJC. So the network of jurisdictions that also, once we pick out these non-SJC sites, you're going to be engaging in a learning community, right? With a group of diverse sites and implementing systemic behavioral health and criminal justice reforms. I won't really go into what we're going to do with the initial year, as Ashley had shared, but I do want to pull out that where the expectation is that there will be an engagement of peer-to-peer learning with the SJC and non-SJC sites. And you're going to be able to provide and showcase, right, your continued progress for the SJC sites to the larger field. And that's going to be done through webinars, product development, and other types of education. These new coalitions that we expect would bring together the existing SJC sites and new jurisdictions. So in the exchange of resources, experiences, and best practices. Now, there is an online learning community called the SJC Exchange. So those non-SJC sites would be a part of this new online community. And basically the SJC Exchange is for individuals and organizations that are a part of the SJC network. And during the participation in the exchange, there's communities that you can be a part of. There's a calendar that populates all the events within the SJC network. There's a wealth of resources in which you will be able to partake in addition to just the in addition to latest discussions. So the exchange allows you to add a discussion post. And with that discussion post, you add conversations that will generate not only conversations, but we talk about local issues. Requests for information can be put on the posts, the discussion posts, any announcement that you may have, and other topics. And what happens is that individuals within the community reply to these discussion posts. So it's a wonderful exchange that takes place being a part of this community. And you also have access to the University of Pretrial. And the University of Free Trial is it's a free online learning community where policymakers and pretrial professionals actually connect and learn together. It's 24/7 access to resources, training, and webcasts, along with ongoing discussions that are taking place on the exchange about not only the successes, but some challenges as well in the field. Next slide. Okay. So the ideal impact network is going to consist of groups, like I said before, that are diverse. And that diversity is going to include jurisdictional size, the geographical spread, population density, and also will have a diverse stakeholder involvement and leadership. It's really important that if you are on this call and you are interested or thinking about applying to the solicitation and the RFP, that you do have your committed leadership that is involved. And we're anticipating that the selected sites, which as I said, which will probably almost 8 sites, will have varying degrees of not only demonstrated progress with implementing behavioral health reform and jail diversion, but also a priority for these applications is going to be given to jurisdictions that are working toward a coordinated systemic approach. And what we mean by that is that intercept map that was shown earlier in the slides goes from the community to the community, right? So we have community, we have initial law enforcement, we have initial courts and initial detention, we have the court system, we have reentry, community supervision, prison and parole, probation and parole, excuse me, and then community corrections. So jurisdictions who are applying should have this coordinated systemic response from everybody from each one of those systems that I just mentioned, and not just focus solely on implementing specific programs. So case in point, you might have a great reentry unit implemented within the jail and have done well and probably are a poster child for a screening and reentry unit within your local jail, but don't really interface with any of those other partners in the system. We want those individuals who, and these jurisdictions, who have that coordinated systemic response to be involved and to apply. So to that end, each community applying for consideration should really identify and engage at least a minimum of 5 individuals, our stakeholders within their community that support this project and are dedicated to allocating the time that it would take to participate in these activities that Ashley had shared previously. So jurisdictions should have identified 1 or more, right? Best or promising practices in the behavioral health reform and diversion across the criminal justice system that you will be able to help other impact network sites implement, and have 1 or more focus areas related to behavioral health reform and criminal justice diversion that you would like assistance with from other impact network sites and national experts. Again, I want to stress the fact that there needs to be a minimum of 5 individuals who are committed to engaging in this opportunity. And one of the 5 individuals should be a person with lived experience in the behavioral health or criminal justice system. So we do acknowledge the fact that specific makeup may vary across sites, and it's recommended that the team include diverse leadership in the areas of housing, behavioral health, and criminal justice. And we will be able to provide you feedback as to what this potential team composition may be if you do have questions after this, this session that we're holding. If you have already developed or activated a community or a committee, a work group that's focused on issues of racial injustice and equity, as well as ongoing willingness to interact with these issues, those jurisdictions will also be prioritized Just like Patrick had stated that the challenge is going to do a reset because of the data that we've been able to establish and become aware of as it relates to the racial injustice and inequity that's going on nationwide. We want to make sure that we are prioritizing jurisdictions that are really taking this racial justice and equity to another level. We also want to stress that the jurisdiction, the solicitation is open up, will probably be prioritizing jurisdictions that have are within a consent decree, that these jurisdictions have been told that they have failed to maintain constitutionally adequate mental health care within their system, and a class action lawsuit has been filed. So if you're one of those jurisdictions or you know of a jurisdiction, feel free to share this RFP with them as well. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? So the 5 current SJC sites have already been selected, and you should have received an email as it relates to what our next steps through PRI will be. We are taking the applications for the solicitation of the RFP, has been distributed. If you know of a jurisdiction or you don't have a copy of that RFP, it can be found on this link that we are sharing now. The review process is going to be conducted by our strategic allies and which are national technical assistance partners within the SJC exchange. We ask that you apply by April 12th. It will be closed at that point. All non-SJC sites will be notified of their selection by May 10th. And then in late May or early June, the date will be established at some time in the next couple of weeks. We're going to have a kickoff meeting, and all sites will be a part of that kickoff meeting, which will be mandatory for SJC and non-SJC sites. Now I am going to turn this over to my colleague, Reggie Herder, who is going to take questions. Next slide. Thank you.
My apologies. So I've been monitoring the chat here and just want to make sure if you haven't been reading the chat that you know what has been sent. Yes, the slides will be available and sent out to the group, and that will also have a link to the application. The webinar will also be recorded, so a link to that, the webinar will also be there, and as well as a link to overall SJC, so you can look at more information. As Lisa just said, by May 10th, non-SJC sites will be notified, and you do not have to have a SIM done in order to apply to be a part of the network. In addition to that, there's a couple other questions that have come in this is particular to innovation sites. So within the SJC network, there's implementation sites and innovation sites. One of the clarifying questions is around if an innovation site does not currently receive funding, are those jurisdictions able to apply? And unfortunately, no, we're only able to go with the 5 SJC sites, but we will be looking at some of the SJC sites, innovation and implementation sites, to have participate as in specific areas that they've done a lot of work in. Another question was how many sites do we expect will apply? I wish I knew the answer to that, but we do not know exactly how many will apply. We have sent this out very broadly to a lot of different networks. So stay tuned to that. We'll report that after we've got all the applications, but unfortunately, I'm not able to answer that at this point. It looks like someone else has raised their hand. I'm not seeing who that is, Tamara, excuse me. Did I get that person? So I think we have another question that's just come in. Will the non-SJC sites have access to reports that are labeled not for distribution on the exchange? Great question. We have not talked about that one internally. I am guessing that because this is actually an expansion and there's non-SJC sites, that we will work with MacArthur Foundation to talk through what can be posted both on the exchange and non. So I do not have a direct answer for that. I want to invite Ashley, Lisa, or Travis to see if there's a different response they might have on that. Travis?
Reggie, I would share in your response. This is a network expansion. So the sites that will become the 8 currently outside of the Safety and Justice Challenge, they will become part of the Safety and Justice Challenge. So they would then be on the exchange and be eligible to see those documents.
Thank you, Travis. So another question is, have we done studies of the after effects of decarceration and how crime rates are affected? Partners within the MacArthur network are doing some various research around that, but we can pull that information later. Travis, do you want to jump in on that one also? No? Okay. So there is one of the great things about being a partner within the SJC network is the depth and breadth of different kinds of research and evaluations that are taking place. We have another question looks like from Adam Goss. Adam, did you?
That might be the person that raised their hand, Reg. So feel free to chat your question, Adam.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That was, excuse me, that was actually an accident. So you guys can just.
We're glad to hear your voice. Any other questions from anyone? Anything, Patrick, that we want to circle back with you on to see if there's anything else that you want to make sure we let folks know?
Well, I mean, I guess I would just say, if in doubt, I'm speaking really now to the potential new jurisdictions. If you're in doubt, please apply. I mean, there may be more to this than it sounds like, and I think this is where we're going in the next few years. So we're starting out with this structure that has been described, and it could change over time and get bigger. So get in on it. That's what I would urge.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And another question just came in, and Ashley did send it out, but applications are due April 12th.
So if you are a site that's thinking about applying, can you put in the chat function where exactly you're from? That might be helpful and interesting to see.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, any other, thanks very much. We see that coming in. I can already see that there's a wide distribution of counties and states that will be represented. Thank you very much for your interest. I think we'll let this stay open for a couple more moments as folks chime in here.
And once we have the recording link for this session, we'll also post it to that same website, the link that you keep seeing in the chat box. So if you'd like to distribute this to any of your partners or anything like that, feel free.
I want to just do a shout out. There's, I see some folks on here from the National Network of Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils. So shout out to all of you, as I remember how even in that network, we've done a lot of peer learning. And so it would be great to have some of those folks be able to advance this further. So Tamara is letting us know there's a question about the effects of decarceration. Yes, and so an overall study that I think that was actually put in there specifically as crime rates being affected. But ISLG, which is one of the main partners who's doing research work under MacArthur, would have better answers to that. I have not seen a thing specifically around behavioral health and the effects of decarceration. Continue to put your questions in if you have any. And if not, again, we try to create a streamlined application for you to be able to fill out. We are looking for folks who are diverse, again, in both size of community, as well as across the country. And as Lisa mentioned, in particular, there are some folks who are under consent decrees, and oftentimes that's both in police and sheriff. And I think you will find that this is a really helpful kind of approach and network to really focus in on particular issues, to be able to look specifically about a systemic approach to addressing your behavioral health issues for persons who are living with not just mental illness, but also substance use disorders and other disabilities. At that point, maybe Travis, we can
I think
back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reggie, and thank you for the overview, Ashley and Lisa and Reggie, and some of these great questions. And it's encouraging to see the jurisdictions all over the country that maybe have an interest in applying, and we hope that you do. We look forward to working with you in the coming years on the Impact Network in this effort. And since there aren't any additional questions coming in at this time, we're going to go ahead and wrap this webinar up. Again, thank you, Patrick, for representing the foundation here today, and Tamara for running the show. And as you've heard, the link is out there. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted, and we would love to see your applications by the 12th. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.